Welcome back to the gate. I am the gatekeeper, and today we see if you truly understand the fruit of knowledge. Today we enter the Silicon Valley inner sanctum. You claim to be an Apple devotee? Everyone knows the iPhone, the sleek glass stores, and the black turtleneck. But a true master knows that before the trillion-dollar valuation, there was a blue box, a garage, and a third founder who walked away from a fortune that would have changed the course of his lineage forever. I have built 5 gates to see if you are a think different visionary or just another tourist in the crowd. If you can pass them all, you've earned the title of Master of the 6502. Get ready to prove your fandom. Gate 1. The Third Man. The Origin. In 1976, Apple wasn't just the two Steves. There was a third co-founder, a seasoned engineer from Atari who drafted the original partnership agreement. He also designed the first Apple logo, a woodcut-style image of Isaac Newton under a tree. He was the adult in the room, brought in to mediate between the two young geniuses. But he became very concerned about financial liability, both his own and Apple itself. So, after only 12 days, he decided to sell his 10% stake in Apple back to Jobs and Wozniak. He sold his shares for $800, which is just under $5,000 in today's money. On the other hand, today, that 10% stake in Apple is worth billions and billions of dollars. Name the man who made the most expensive mistake in tech history. If you said Ronald Wayne, you may pass. Steve Jobs met Wayne when they both worked at Atari. Steve respected Wayne's experience and brought Wayne on board specifically to provide mechanical engineering oversight and to act as a tiebreaker between himself and the brilliant but often stubborn Steve Wozniak. Ronald Wayne returned to Atari for a time and later ran a stamp and coin shop in Nevada. Despite missing out on a fortune that would be worth over $300 billion today, he has famously stated in interviews that he has no regrets, claiming that standing between the two Steves was like having a tiger by the tail, and that the stress of the high-stakes tech world wasn't worth his peace of mind. What would you have done? But anyway, moving on. Gate 2. The Hacking Rebellion. The prehistory. Before they ever built a computer, Jobs and Wozniak were digital outlaws. They created a device that allowed them to make free long-distance phone calls by mimicking a specific 2600 Hz tone used by the phone company's switching systems. They learned the secret from a man named John Draper, who discovered that a plastic whistle found in a box of Cap'n Crunch cereal could literally hack into the world's phone lines. Jobs and Woz were able to digitally replicate that frequency with $40 of material, crafting little boxes they sold out of their dorm rooms for $150 apiece. Quite a markup for a pair of teenagers. What did they call this illegal hacking tool? The answer is the blue box. Steve Jobs later said that without the confidence they gained from controlling a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure with a $40 circuit board, Apple would never have existed. If you didn't know the roots of the rebellion, you aren't ready for the next gate. Gate 3. The Price of the Beast. The First Machine. The Apple I computer was essentially just a raw circuit board. No keyboard, no monitor, no case. It was sold primarily through a small shop called the Byte Shop, but the pricing remains a point of obsession for collectors. Steve Wozniak, who loved repeating digits, set a price that landed the machine at exactly $666.66. It wasn't a message from the underworld. It wasn't a message from the occult. It was simply a wholesale markup combined with Woz's personal obsession with triple digits. But before it hit the shelves, it had to survive the toughest crowd in Silicon Valley. Tell me, what was the name of the legendary computer club where the Apple I was first demonstrated to a crowd of skeptical hobbyists? The answer is the Homebrew Computer Club. If you can't name the club that launched a revolution, your knowledge is just a system error. Gate 4. The 1984 Gamble, the Revolution. In 1984, Apple released a commercial that changed advertising forever. Directed by Ridley Scott, the man behind Alien and Blade Runner, it aired only once, ever, during 1984's Super Bowl. The ad broke every single rule of advertising. It never mentioned the product's specs. It never mentioned the product's price. It didn't even bother to show you what the product looked like. The board of directors actually hated the ad and tried to sell off the airtime they had already purchased, but the marketing team defied them. They knew they had a cinematic masterpiece on their hands and bet everything on it. Now then, this wasn't just an ad. It was a declaration of war against a specific corporate giant that Apple portrayed as Big Brother, the company Apple was determined to dethrone. Tell me, what was the name of the corporate Big Brother that Apple was publicly mocking in this 1984 masterpiece? This was an easy one, no? The answer is IBM. Apple wanted to position the Macintosh not as a tool for the office, but as a weapon for the individual. Apple essentially called out the computer market as a soul-crushing dystopia, with IBM as the oppressive force. Apple cast themselves as the lone heroic rebels. And if you didn't know who the enemy was, well, you're just another cog in the machine. Gate 5. The Exiles Return. The Wilderness Years. In 1985, after a bitter power struggle with CEO John Sculley, Steve Jobs was stripped of his duties and effectively fired from the company he started a decade earlier. He was relegated to a back-office building he mockingly called Siberia, but he didn't stay quiet long. Steve Jobs parted with Apple, and during his 11 years away, he poured his fortune into two massive gambles. First, he bought a small little digital animation studio from George Lucas called Pixar. Pixar, of course, went on to do great things. Steve Jobs also founded a brand new computer company, intending to build the most advanced workstation the world had ever seen. Meanwhile, at Apple, by 1996, the company was struggling and on the verge of bankruptcy. Apple desperately needed a modern operating system to survive. They ended up buying Jobs' new company for over $400 million, while also reseating Steve Jobs to the throne he had lost. Tell me, what was the name of the high-end computer company Jobs founded founded during his exile that eventually became the architectural backbone of the modern Mac? The answer is Next. While the hardware never became a mass-market success, the Next Step software was so far ahead of its time that it provided the foundation for Mac OS X and even the world's first web browser. If you didn't know about the exile, you don't understand the return. You've survived the garage, the exile, and the 666 price point. But now you face the final gate. Put yourself in the shoes of Ronald Wayne. In 1976, he signed away a 10% stake in Apple for $800, the price of a mid-range iPad today. Is he a man of incredible zen and integrity, or is he just lying to himself to keep from losing his mind? Put yourself in his shoes and be honest. Would the what-ifs haunt you forever, or could you let it go? Tell me how you'd actually feel in the comments. So, how did you do? Did you find the one more thing, or are you just a system error? Tell me your score and your answer to the final gate down in the comments. I'll be reading. I might even deign to reply. I am the gatekeeper. Subscribe, step up, and prove your fandom.